So what has gone wrong with Japanese Pokemon? If you've been collecting Japanese Pokemon cards for a while, you've probably noticed, or you've definitely noticed, that they went from the most affordable type of Pokemon product you could collect to the very least affordable Pokemon product that you could possibly collect. And this all kind of happened within the span of 2 years. And while English Pokemon has stabilized both in price and availability for the most part, Japanese Pokemon has kind of done a complete opposite. We've kind of got to the point now where people are rethinking their collecting of Japanese Pokemon cards. It's simply just too unaffordable. And I posed the question to my followers on Instagram whether it's within their budget to actually be collecting Japanese Pokemon cards. And 85% of people said no, they can no longer afford to collect Japanese Pokemon cards, which is an overwhelming majority. So, what happened? What caused all of this? I wanted to take a look because I couldn't find too many people kind of talking about this. A lot of people just kind of took it as face value and said, you know what, I'm out of Japanese Pokemon. They didn't really ask why it was happening. So I wanted to kind of take a somewhat deep dive and figure out what is going on with Pokemon in Japan. Now, first off, I kind of want to take a step back from Pokemon itself and check out Japan's economy. So feel free to skip ahead to the Pokemon part if you don't really care about Japan's economy. This will take like 2 minutes. But to get the full picture and understanding, we need to ask ourselves, you know, is Japan's economy and has Japan's economy improved and recovered since 2020? And the big hot topic of any economic or financial question is inflation. So has inflation really battered Japan? Well, Japan's inflation rate isn't actually that bad. It's currently below 3% at 2.73%, which is lower than it was in 2014 and lower than it was in the 90s. And a lot of economists believe that it's going to be around 1.5% in 2024. So it's definitely recovered from that 2020 craziness we all went through. And it's definitely a lot better compared to a lot of other advanced countries. So let's take the United Kingdom as an example. United Kingdom is 6.5% inflation. The United States has 2.9% inflation. So Japan is better off inflation-wise than both these countries. And since we're kind of pegging this whole thing against English Pokemon, obviously inflation is not the main driver because we would have been seeing crazy increases of, $200 booster boxes in English Pokemon too. So what about the strength of the Japanese yen? This is something I always talk to my supplier about. He would always be complaining about the strength of the Japanese yen. So for those of you that don't know, if the yen increases in value, that means it's more expensive for us as people overseas importing Japanese products. So if the yen went up and I wanted a booster box, it would cost me more US dollars than it otherwise would. And over the past 5 years, the Japanese yen is actually down 21% against the US dollar. So it should be right now cheaper for me to purchase Japanese goods than it was 5 years ago. In the case of Pokemon, that is just simply not true. So inflation and the strength of the Japanese yen are just not the two main factors at play here. So I looked at two other main things that, us humans need to survive, and that's fuel and electricity. Neither of those really had that much change. Since 2018, there's been pretty much no change in the price of fuel or electricity. So I couldn't really find one alarming statistic that made me think, aha, I've got it. I found it. This makes perfect sense as to why, Japan is getting more expensive, why it's more expensive for me to be importing from Japan. I just couldn't find anything. Yes, every country is going through these price increases, whether it's inflation, cost of living, cost of food, cost of fuel, whatever. Every country is going through this, but it would take a massive increase in inflation for this to just directly impact Pokemon booster boxes where they're going up 200%. So I kind of ruled out the economics of everything, and it was time to put boots on the ground and figure out what is going on in Japan. So it's time to look at Pokemon itself, or not Pokemon itself, but rather the state of Pokemon within Japan. And we can first look at the statement that I'm going to put on the screen for you from the Pokemon company themselves from January of 2022, where they said the MSRP of Pokemon products will be increasing 5 to 10% because of demand and the inevitable, cost increases that go with higher demand products. And I think that's totally fair. I think 5 to 10% is very justifiable for the Pokemon company. When you have to scale things up, it costs a lot more money. 5 to 10%, that's totally cool with me. We need to find out where the other 190% is coming from. And before we go any further, I kind of wanted to show you guys what the cost of a booster box costed back in December 2020, so late 2020, early 2021. It was for 3 booster boxes, and it was from a website called Plaza Japan. I'm pretty sure all of you know who Plaza Japan are. They're one of the big main Japanese Pokemon retailers for overseas customers mostly. And Plaza Japan was awesome. I could buy 3 Japanese booster boxes for the equivalent of 1 English booster box in 2020 and have money to spare after that. So if you look at this invoice here, it was for 1 Dream League box and 2 Remix Bout boxes, each for 4,980 yen, which is the equivalent of $35.12. And that's an incredibly reasonable price. I don't even want to look at how much a Dream League box goes for now. But let's look at Plaza Japan today. So we know what they were like in 2020. It was around $35 a booster box. And honestly, it makes me, I don't know if angry is the word, but upset to look at this. But it has to be done. So they are selling Clay Burst, relatively new Japanese Pokemon set. They're selling single packs for $7. So if you wanted the equivalent of a booster box, so 30 packs, that'd be $210. Let's not forget, this is not an English set where you're getting 10 cards per booster box. It is half of that. It is 5 cards per pack. And that is before adding the shipping cost. This is just absurdly greedy by Plaza Japan. And the funniest part about all of this is that it says in the description, this item box was damaged during transit and will be sold as individual packs. Now, hold on. If a product has been damaged, surely you would sell the packs at a discount and not a markup. But this irritates me because Plaza Japan are just ripping you off. $7 a pack? Like, I just don't understand. It's crazy to me. So I did want to steer away and show you guys the Pokemon 151 set. Now, it's currently out of stock, but retailing for $119.28. Now, as you can see on the listing itself, it says out of stock. I don't think that's been updated since the pre-orders. So I suspect that this will substantially jump in price once they get a fresh batch in. I believe it says the 1st of August. So 1st of August, I can almost guarantee you it will not be $119.28. It'll be closer to $140, maybe even $190. Nothing would surprise me anymore. I was told from a source in Japan that the MSRP for a Pokemon 151 set booster box is 5,500 yen, which is under $40. Now, if this is true, that means it's a 200% markup. They're only doing it because they can get away with selling it for that price because it will sell. So there we have it. Case closed. The retailers in Japan are the ones that are pumping up prices due to the demand. And that means that retailers like Plaza Japan and Nin are taking home a nice, healthy 100% profit margin on every single booster box that they get. And they're not getting like 10 booster boxes. They're getting hundreds or thousands of these booster boxes and selling them overseas for a huge profit. Now, I'm all for making money and doing good business and growing a business and all of that stuff. But I can definitely say I would never increase the cost of my booster boxes by 100+% just because I could. And, inherently price out a huge percentage of the population. I remember when Legendary Heartbeat came out, I think I was putting them up for sale on eBay $20 lower than other YouTubers like SM Pratt. I could have easily been selling them for like $90, and I just decided, $10 per booster box, bring them in is probably enough, so I'll sell them for $70. But, not all corporations and people think like that, but it's gotten out of hand, and it definitely seems to point towards the big sellers in Japan pumping up prices of booster boxes. Now, I'm not saying at all that Nin and Plaza Japan, they're bad people, they're bad businesses or whatever. It is what it is. These are the prices they can sell for. They're trying to make as much money as they can. But on the other hand, you do have to think about the ecosystem of the Pokemon community. I feel really bad for the people in Japan who used to be able to get booster boxes for like $30, $35. And now that because Japanese Pokemon has become just so popular, they're now seeing, 200% increases in the price. Just imagine if, China, for example, became obsessed with English booster boxes and they were importing hundreds of thousands of booster boxes, and our prices ended up going up to $300 per booster box. That's the equivalent of what's basically happened in Japan. It's really sad to see because Japan was affordable. It was my way of saying I don't really care about English anymore because it's more affordable for me to buy good quality cards in Japan. And I love Japanese Pokemon cards. I love the promos. I love everything about it. It saved me money and I enjoyed doing it. Now it's like I have to spend so much money to bring in one booster box, and the set is so big, it's so vast, it's impossible to complete. Like getting a master set of Pokemon 151 is impossible. Like I don't know if anyone can possibly do it unless you own like a Pokemon store yourself. I don't see a way for the market to cool down unless Pokemon just printed the bejesus out of it, which it already is printing a ton, but it would need to just print such an excess to drive the price. I don't even know if it's possible. I don't know if they have the capacity to do it. And it sucks. It sucks. Like I have not opened a Japanese booster box since well over a year now, I guess. I'm just buying, the odd singles where I can, whenever I can. And because of those box prices, it now translates to the cards themselves. So I hope this gave you a little bit of insight as to what's going on in Japan. It sucks. Anyway, thanks for watching. Peace.